The engine hummed smoothly as it pulled into the dealership lot, the bright midday sun glinting off the gleaming metal of the cars on display. Maya Sinclair's pulse raced, not with excitement, but with something heavier, more familiar. The world had always looked at her differently. Black, female, and successful, Maya had learned early that even the most basic acts of moving through the world required a certain armor. She parked her car, a sleek black sedan, and stepped out, pulling her oversized sunglasses from her eyes. She adjusted the tailored blazer that had become her armor and walked toward the entrance of Sinclair Motors, the name of the very company she had built from the ground up. The salesmen were already watching her. Maya had seen their type before, and she could feel their eyes sizing her up before she even reached the door. A few had already exchanged knowing glances. She could tell by the subtle way their jaws tightened as they turned away. She was used to it, but it still stung. "Can I help you, ma'am?" a tall, clean-cut man asked as she approached the door. He wore a slight smirk, his tone condescending without even realizing it. Maya had seen it all before. This was the same look she'd gotten in meetings, at restaurants, and in nearly every high-end space she'd ever dared enter. "I'm here to speak with the manager," Maya replied calmly, her voice steady, betraying no hint of the frustration building inside her. The salesman gave her a quick, dismissive once-over. Sure, he muttered, barely glancing at her again as he turned his back, walking into the showroom to fetch the manager. Maya took a moment to take in the place. Sinclair Motors had been her dream. Her vision. It had started with a single used car lot and a business loan. Now it stretched across the state, employing hundreds of people and selling some of the most coveted luxury vehicles on the market. A few minutes later, the manager, mid-40s, white, wearing a perfectly pressed suit, emerged. He extended his hand with a practiced smile, though his eyes held an unmistakable doubt. "How can I help you today?" "I need to speak with you about a couple of vehicles," Maya said, her tone professional and composed. "Of course," he responded, his eyes scanning her figure for a moment before quickly moving back up to her face. "What kind of vehicles are you interested in?" "I'm looking at expanding my fleet," Maya said, "for my business." The words were out before she even realized they'd slipped from her lips. Her heartbeat quickened. His smile tightened just a fraction, the look in his eyes, one that Maya had encountered too many times before, was that of disbelief, followed by quick judgment. He turned slightly, motioning toward the cars. "Well, we have a wide variety of models here. If you'd like, I can show you our top sellers," he said, his voice edging into patronizing territory. "I'm sure you'll find something to suit your needs." Maya had become accustomed to people like him, people who, despite her accomplishments, still saw her as an outsider, as someone who didn't belong in this space. She resisted the urge to correct him, to tell him who she was. But today, she had an agenda. Today, she was here not just to buy cars, but to make a statement. As they walked toward the luxury section, Maya's thoughts raced. She'd been here before. Not physically, but mentally, she had always been an anomaly in this space. People were shocked to see a black woman excelling in the world of high-end luxury cars, let alone owning a dealership empire. But it was the very essence of who she was that had fueled her success. Every barrier, every door closed in her face had only driven her further. She noticed that the salespeople were still watching her, still whispering under their breath. They didn't know who she was, of course. Maya had made a choice early on to keep her identity under wraps when shopping. The anonymity gave her the chance to witness the raw truth of how people treated her. The manager led her into the showroom, still talking. He was listing off features, but Maya wasn't really listening anymore. His words were just noise, background static. She was about to speak when she noticed one of the cars, a limited edition vehicle, one she'd had her eye on for some time, parked at the far end of the showroom. "Actually," she interrupted, her voice cutting through his monologue, "I'll take a look at that one over there." She nodded toward the vehicle, a sleek black sports car. The manager's face fell, but he quickly masked his reaction with a tight smile. That one? Well, let's see. We just got that model in. It's a bit, his voice trailed off, as if assessing whether this was something he wanted to offer her. It's a bit on the higher end. Maya didn't flinch. I'm aware of the pricing. The manager hesitated before motioning toward the car. Well, if that's what you're interested in, he stepped aside, letting her approach the vehicle. She ran her fingers over the hood, her mind elsewhere, thoughts turning. She had spent years working toward this moment, building her empire, fighting against every assumption, every wrong judgment. But even here, in her own dealership, Maya found herself still battling the systemic biases that clung to her like a second skin. The manager stood silently nearby, watching her. Maya could feel the weight of his gaze, but she didn't let it deter her. She was used to people doubting her, questioning her every step. She was used to being underestimated, and today, she was determined to prove him, and everyone else, wrong. Maya took a deep breath before turning to face the manager. You should know, I'm the owner of this dealership. The whole chain. His face froze, his eyes widening. The smugness that had laced his tone earlier disappeared, replaced by something else, embarrassment, disbelief. What? He stammered. My name is Maya Sinclair. I own Sinclair Motors, along with every branch you see here. She watched as the realization settled over him, as the truth slowly peeled away his pretenses. She saw his confusion, his shock. I'm sorry, ma'am, he muttered, but his voice lacked the same assurance it had moments before. I didn't realize, no, Maya interrupted, her voice calm but firm. You didn't. But now you do. The irony of it all wasn't lost on her. A woman like her. Successful, empowered, respected in the business world, was still reduced to nothing more than an outsider in a space that was, by all accounts, hers. She had worked too hard to let anyone forget that. I'll take the car, she said, her voice carrying the weight of finality. As she turned and walked away, she knew this wasn't the last time she would face such judgments. But today, in this moment, she had reclaimed her power, and she would continue to do so, one step at a time. Her voice remained calm, but her actions spoke louder than any words could. Maya walked out of the showroom with the same composed stride, her heels clicking against the polished floor with every step. She could feel the eyes on her, the awkward glances, the stifled whispers, but she didn't care. The cool breeze outside felt like a breath of fresh air, a reminder that no matter how many walls people tried to build around her, she would always find a way through. She reached her car, but before she could open the door, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she found the manager standing a few feet behind her, looking sheepish. His earlier bravado had crumbled, leaving him with an apology that felt long overdue. I owe you an apology, Miss Sinclair, he stammered, his hands wringing nervously. I didn't mean to treat you like that. I misunderstood. Maya gave him a small nod but didn't speak immediately. His apology felt like a script, forced and devoid of any real understanding. This was something she had heard 100 times before, an apology offered only after someone realized that they had underestimated her. Apologies don't change anything, Maya finally said, her tone cool and matter-of-fact. What matters is what happens next. I hope this experience teaches you more than just my name. The manager nodded, clearly embarrassed. I understand, ma'am. I'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Maya's eyes lingered on him for a moment, studying the man who had looked down on her just minutes ago. The realization that this was not a unique moment, just another instance of someone failing to see her for who she was, settled in. It was a constant fight, one she was used to, but that didn't make it any less draining. I hope it doesn't, she said, and with that, she slid into her car, closing the door firmly behind her. As the engine roared to life, she took a deep breath, her grip on the steering wheel steady. The weight of what had just happened wasn't lost on her, but it didn't feel like a victory either. This was just another chapter in a story she'd been telling for years, one where she had to prove herself not just through her work, but by simply being unapologetically herself. Maya drove down the road, her thoughts racing. This had been a small battle in the ongoing war against bias, but it wasn't over. She knew that the system wasn't going to change overnight, and that for every manager who made assumptions about her, there would be 10 more who did the same. But as she looked ahead, she knew that she wasn't alone in this fight. Sinclair Motors had been built on the foundation of perseverance, a refusal to back down in the face of adversity. And that was exactly what she planned to keep doing, fighting. Every day, every step. When she arrived at the office, her assistant greeted her with a warm smile, but Maya could see the question in her eyes. "Everything okay?" her assistant asked, sensing something different in Maya's posture. Maya nodded, her face softening. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just another reminder that people see what they want to see, not what's actually in front of them." Her assistant didn't press, but the understanding in her eyes spoke volumes. She'd been with Maya long enough to know that those subtle slights, those small moments of disregard, were something Maya would never let slide. They fueled her, even when she wished they didn't. Inside, Maya's office was quiet, a stark contrast to the storm of thoughts racing through her mind. She sat down at her desk, the weight of the day settling in her bones. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, seeing a series of messages from her legal team, her PR team, and various business partners. Everything was in motion, as always. But now, more than ever, the reality hit her. She was fighting for something bigger than just herself. She wasn't just building a brand or growing an empire. She was fighting to change the way people saw others, especially those like her. She had faced a lifetime of doubt. She had been told time and time again that a black woman, in a world dominated by wealthy white men, would never succeed. And yet here she was. She had defied the odds, and in doing so, she had become more than just a symbol of success. She had become a beacon of hope for every person who had ever been told they weren't enough, that they didn't belong. Maya paused for a moment, allowing herself a rare flicker of self-recognition. She wasn't just a businesswoman. She was an activist, a symbol, a voice for all the people who had been silenced. Every decision she made carried weight. Whether it was signing a contract, choosing a car model, or simply showing up at a dealership. Her phone buzzed again, breaking her reverie. This time, it was an email. She opened it, reading through the words with a focused intensity. It was a report from a local community center where she had been actively involved in mentoring young people from underprivileged backgrounds. The email informed her that her recent donation had sparked interest from several local businesses who wanted to contribute, helping to fund scholarships for the students who wanted to pursue higher education. Maya smiled. It was moments like these that made all the struggles worth it. But even as she sat there, a sense of unease lingered. There were still battles to fight. The road to equality was long, and Maya had only just begun. She knew that the world was full of people who would continue to make assumptions about her, to judge her based on the color of her skin, or her gender, or both. But she had also come to realize that this fight, her fight, wasn't just hers alone. Maya picked up the phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Hello. Maya Sinclair," she said confidently, her voice steady with the conviction that only comes from having nothing left to lose. "I need you to arrange a meeting with the city council. It's time to talk about change. Real change." The line went quiet for a moment before the person on the other end spoke, their voice a mix of surprise and admiration. "Understood. We'll set it up." Maya hung up the phone and leaned back in her chair. There was a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel so lonely. She wasn't just pushing for her own success anymore. She was paving the way for everyone who had ever been silenced or overlooked. As she looked out of her office window, Maya Sinclair knew that she would keep fighting, no matter the odds. The world would learn her name, learn who she really was, and they would see that no matter how many times they tried to put her in a box, they would never define her. As the days passed, Maya found herself more determined than ever. The meeting with the city council was just the beginning. It was clear that the fight for equality and recognition was not going to be won through passive efforts. It required action, courage, and the willingness to stand firm against every barrier that tried to push her back. But for Maya, these were familiar battles. She had faced the weight of systemic bias in every room she walked into. Every time someone underestimated her, it fueled her even more. Her phone rang late one afternoon, breaking her focus as she sifted through paperwork. It was the council office confirming the date for her meeting. She glanced at the calendar, her pulse quickening. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for, not just for herself but for everyone who had ever felt less than, who had been told they were not enough. She was about to take on the very institutions that had helped perpetuate the biases she had fought her whole life. The meeting day arrived, and Maya was ready. She wore a tailored gray suit that spoke volumes in its simplicity, her confidence radiating from every gesture, every step. When she entered the room, she felt the eyes of the council members on her, some familiar, others unsure. This was a place where influence was wielded carefully, where the balance of power shifted on the smallest of words. But Maya was not afraid. She had prepared for this moment, honed her message until it felt like a part of her soul, and when she spoke, it was with the same clarity she used when discussing business strategy. I'm here today because this city, this state, and this country have failed to recognize the potential of people like me, Maya began, her voice unwavering. For too long, people have been judged based on the color of their skin, the way they speak, or the way they look. That's not just a problem for individuals. It's a problem that impacts our economy, our communities, and our future. Her words lingered in the room, and she could feel the shift, the slight change in atmosphere. Maya continued, breaking down the statistics, the data, the history that led her here. She talked about the obstacles women of color faced in business, the difficulties in securing loans, the biases that shaped hiring practices, and the systemic roadblocks that were still alive and well in institutions. But most importantly, she spoke about the untapped potential, the entrepreneurs, the innovators, the workers, who would transform this city if only given the chance. As the meeting went on, Maya could see the council members becoming more engaged. Some of them leaned forward in their chairs, while others scribbled notes. She was starting to make them think. It wasn't enough to simply listen, she wanted them to see her and the people she represented as more than statistics or labels. They needed to understand that this fight was about the dignity of every person who had ever been excluded. She finished her presentation with a call to action, urging the council to consider reparative measures, investments in minority-owned businesses, programs to increase access to capital, and policies that addressed the institutionalized bias in both the private and public sectors. The room was silent for a moment as Maya waited. The weight of her words hung in the air. Then, one of the older council members, a man who had been quiet through most of her talk, cleared his throat. "Ms. Sinclair," he said slowly, his tone softer now, "I have to admit, I didn't expect this from you." Maya didn't flinch. She simply met his gaze. Expectations are a dangerous thing. They limit the possibilities of what we can achieve. The council member nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. I think we have a lot to discuss. You've given us a lot to consider." As the meeting adjourned, Maya shook hands with several of the council members, her mind already racing toward the next step. This was just the beginning, she knew. There would be pushback, resistance, and opposition. But she had seen it all before. This fight was not just hers, it was a fight for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong, everyone who had ever been silenced. Later that evening, as Maya sat in her office overlooking the city, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. The road ahead would not be easy, but the fire inside her was burning brighter than ever. Her work wasn't just about building Sinclair Motors into a successful business, it was about creating a legacy. A legacy where no one would ever have to fight the same battles she had. A legacy where people of all backgrounds, all races, all genders, had an equal shot at their dreams. She picked up her phone and dialed her assistant. "We need to schedule another meeting," she said with resolve. "It's time to talk to the state legislature. I'm not done yet." And with that, Maya Sinclair began preparing for the next chapter of her journey, one where her name would no longer just be recognized in the business world, but in every room where decisions were made, where policies were shaped, and where change was born. Because Maya knew something that no one else had yet realized. This fight, her fight, was only beginning. And she would never stop until the world saw her, saw everyone like her, for exactly who they were, worthy of success, respect, and opportunity. Days turned into weeks as Maya continued to push forward, meeting with lawmakers, community leaders, and business owners. The more she spoke, the more momentum her mission gained. The resistance was always there, lurking in the shadows. Old ways of thinking, deeply entrenched biases, people who believed the system didn't need changing. But Maya's persistence was relentless. She had become a symbol, not just of business acumen, but of the power of resilience. She was no longer just the owner of Sinclair Motors, she was a force, challenging the very fabric of the status quo. The council meeting had been a turning point, but Maya knew it was just the beginning of a larger movement. As she built relationships and found allies, she also became an outspoken advocate for legislation that would protect minority entrepreneurs and push for greater diversity in corporate boardrooms. One afternoon, months after that pivotal council meeting, Maya sat in a spacious conference room in the state capitol. This time, she wasn't there alone. Alongside her were several key allies, local business owners, lawmakers, and advocates for racial equality. They were there to finalize a new bill that would increase funding for minority-owned businesses and implement anti-discrimination policies across the business sector. Maya had spent countless hours drafting, revising, and lobbying for this moment, and now it was on the verge of becoming a reality. As the discussion unfolded, Maya felt the familiar stir of tension in the air. There were still some opponents at the table, still those who tried to dismiss the importance of the bill. But Maya had grown stronger in her resolve. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into Sinclair Motors that fateful day, unsure whether she belonged. She had fought through every barrier, every judgment, and now her voice carried weight. Her time to speak came. Maya stood up, her presence commanding the room. She looked around at the faces that had once doubted her, and then she focused on the future. "This bill isn't just about me. It's about every person who has ever been told they don't belong," she began, her voice steady. "It's about creating a level playing field, where race, gender, or background doesn't dictate how far you can go. Every person, no matter their story, should have the chance to build, create, and succeed. That's the America I want to live in, and that's the one I'm fighting for." The room went silent, and she could see the change in their eyes. It wasn't just the words. It was her unwavering belief in what she was fighting for. There was no doubt now, Maya Sinclair had become more than just a business owner. She had become a leader, a catalyst for change. The bill passed unanimously that day, but the victory wasn't just in the legislation, it was in the recognition that change had finally begun. Maya didn't just break through the glass ceiling. She shattered it, paving the way for others to follow. Back at Sinclair Motors, a new era began. The dealership expanded its reach, growing into new communities and building partnerships that championed diversity and equality. Maya continued to mentor young entrepreneurs, giving them the tools, resources, and platform to rise above the obstacles she had once faced. She spoke at schools, worked with nonprofits, and hosted workshops, ensuring that her fight was always tied to lifting others. As the years passed, Maya's name became synonymous with integrity and justice. Her legacy wasn't just the empire she built, but the many lives she impacted along the way. The story of the black woman who had been rejected by a car dealership only to reveal she owned the entire chain was retold time and time again, but with each retelling, the message changed. It wasn't just about the revelation, it was about the resilience, the perseverance, and the fight for something bigger than personal success. On a quiet evening, standing in front of the original Sinclair Motors lot, the very place where it all began, Maya took a moment to reflect. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the cars parked outside, but it wasn't just the light she was soaking in. It was the feeling of knowing that the fight had been worth it. Maya smiled, knowing that the work would never truly be done, but that was the beauty of it. Change wasn't something that happened overnight, it was a process, a legacy built one day, one person at a time. She had started with nothing but a dream, and now she had built something that would stand long after she was gone, a legacy not of business alone, but of human dignity, respect, and the belief that anyone, no matter who they were, deserved the chance to succeed. And with that, Maya Sinclair walked back into the dealership, ready to take on whatever came next, knowing that her fight for equality, justice, and opportunity was far from over, but she was no longer fighting alone. The world was beginning to see her, see everyone like her, for exactly who they were. And it was only just the beginning.